the whiskey, and the Rainbow Bar and Grill.
At that point in time, there was an influx of baby groupies. And I mean babies. They were 13 and 14. And I was already the grand old age of 21. Boy, the guys wanted these baby girls. That was the next step for these guys. So Jimmy got involved with a young girl named Lori.
I first heard Led Zeppelin in 1973, and obviously it was Stairway to Heaven. I became an immediate fan and fell in love with the band from day one, and never had any aspirations of meeting Jimmy or wanting to meet them or anything like that. At that particular time, I was a teen model, and so that's how I met Jimmy, actually, because he'd seen my photograph and wanted to meet me. What happened was, I guess Led Zeppelin came to town and had seen all these photos, and Jimmy had made a call to Lee Childers saying, I want to meet Lori Maddox. So next thing you know, we were taking a drive down to the Hyatt House to go meet the band, and I was terrified because, first of all, I was still, I was a baby. I mean, come on, and this was Led Zeppelin.
She was 14, or not quite 14. And he just was intrigued with it. You know, our thing had run its course in his mind, so not in mine, of course. And so one day, they were in town, we hooked up, we got together, I was at the whiskey with him, and he left with this girl.
He just had this really wonderful, calm demeanor about him. Something very mysterious and always kind and sweet. I don't know how to explain him. When you do meet him and when you do get to know him, you just immediately fall in love with him because he's so sweet. I used to stand on the side of the stage and just be in awe and say, why me? You know, he's playing in front of 30,000 people at the Forum, and there I am standing there, and, you know, he's playing. It was the most beautiful thing ever.
The beginning of 1973 saw the long-awaited release of Zeppelin's fifth album, Houses of the Holy. This would mark the first Led Zeppelin album to have an actual title. Ever since the Beatles' breakup in April of 1970, Led Zeppelin had wrestled their crown away and were deemed rock's most successful attraction. By that time, their popularity was so immense and far-reaching that a member of the Fab Four came calling to see what the fuss was all about.
George had come to the show because he called me up and he said, look, when do I arrive? And I said, what do you mean when do you arrive? You fucking arrive at the beginning. So he said, well what about, when's the intermission? I said, what intermission? He said, you don't have to know. I said, they go on at 8 and they finish at 10:30. He said, you're joking. I said, no. He said, fuck me, we used to be booked for 20 minutes and be off stage in 15.
On the tour, Led Zeppelin played to sold-out crowds at New York's Madison Square Garden. But the bigger story was the one that occurred off-stage at the nearby Drake Hotel.
Jimmy called me, wanted $600 or something to buy a new guitar, and I went to the safe and I got the 600 and locked it back up again. Gave him his money, and when we were leaving the hotel to go to Madison Square Gardens, I needed to get the money out to pay the film crew and pay off the jet or whatever bits and pieces business you want to do. So Peter said, bring all the money with you. Well, when I looked in there, the only thing in there were 4 passports. They'd known me for years and knew I didn't steal it. I mean, they weren't pissed off with me. I think they were pissed off that it was gone.
The FBI conducted an investigation, but the culprit was never found, nor was the $203,000 in cash. The band returned home and spent the remainder of the year with their families. The end of 1973 also spelled the end of Led Zeppelin's contract with Atlantic Records. Because of their immense popularity, the price for a contract renewal would be steep. Part of that price was the formation of the band's own label, Swan Song Records.
We were like the first band that they ever signed, and it just so happened that they were launching Swan Song that month. So we, as their protégés, had to go to the openings in LA and New York of Swan Song, the launch parties. First time I met Bonzo was when he gave us a lecture on behaving ourselves. Bonzo marched into our rooms and said, this is a big day for us, and, you know, keep the British flag flying and behave yourself, don't drink too much. All right. Bless him.
On May 10th, 1974, Led Zeppelin hosted an elaborate launch party in LA for their new label.
Jesus, I mean, I'd never seen celebrities like Groucho Marx. When Groucho walked in with these 2 blondes, one on each arm, he just stopped the proceedings.
Groucho may have impressed them, But when Led Zeppelin heard that their musical hero, Elvis Presley, was playing the LA Forum, they arranged a meeting with the King.
Tom Hewlett, the concert promoter, would promote Led Zeppelin, that group, their shows. And they happened to be in LA at the time we were playing the Forum. And they wanted to meet Elvis. And Tom Hewlett, he asked Elvis, is it okay if he brought Led Zeppelin to see him? And he said, yeah, and they came up, they met Elvis, they were just thrilled, could be, and they always idolized Elvis, and, one of the other groups said, if it wasn't for Elvis, we wouldn't have been musicians. And it was exciting for them, and Elvis was thrilled. They were nice guys.
It was a whole funny evening, but I mean, everyone was kind of tiptoeing around because this was Elvis. I mean, I'm sure it'd be like meeting the Queen of England or something, someone you're really never going to get close to or even imagine you're going to have anything to do with.
February 24th, 1975 saw the release of Led Zeppelin's 6th album and their first on Swan Song. A double album, Physical Graffiti quickly rose to the #1 chart position. The band settled in Malibu to write songs for the next album and relax near their private playground of Los Angeles. Then, in November of 1975, Led Zeppelin entered Musicland Studios in Munich, Germany to record the Presence album in a whirlwind 18 days.
They were quick. I mean, Presence was done in like 3 weeks.
There was no time to really think the things out. I just had to lay it down more or less. First track, harmonised, second track, it's really fast working on that. All the guitar overdubs, the Presence were done in one night. But I didn't think I'd be able to do it in one night. I thought it would take, I'd have to do it across maybe 3 different nights to get the individual sections sort of crystallised, and everything was just pouring out. I was very happy with the guitar playing on that whole album, as far as the maturity of playing goes.
They rehearsed it and wrote it out in Malibu, flew into Munich. I mean, Page had this wonderful idea, which I hated, that he always recorded in miserable places and cold weather. I don't know whether he did it on purpose because he knew there was nothing else to do but work, and that way they'd have to get out there quick. If they'd done it in Barbados, they'd never get anything done.
In October of 1976, an idea that Peter and the band had put in motion years earlier finally came to fruition. They had hired Joe Massett to make a movie about Led Zeppelin on the road, and the resulting The Song Remains the Same was finally released.
It all started in the Sheraton Hotel in Boston, and everybody's sitting around talking about a film which we talked about for some time. The group had talked about it, and somebody said, why don't we make a film, G? So I said, yeah, that's an idea.
It's 1 gig at Madison Square Garden, interspersed by what we would consider to be representations of how we'd like ourselves to be seen or off stage,
See, I think the main thing was to get over the fact that it just wasn't a film of a concert. I mean, there's been lots of not lots, but there's been quite a few films that have just been of concerts on stage, and we wanted to get beyond that.
Yeah, if we're going to be self-indulgent, we might as well try and expand our indulgence a little bit,
But they were totally in charge. They had a picture in their mind of what they wanted to see. That was a matter of having the director shoot what was in their mind.
I mean, there are certain things that piss me off about the actual filming, but nevertheless, I mean, as far as it goes, I'm really pleased it is there. It's a documentary more than anything else.
Led Zeppelin in concert and beyond.
I think a lot of the joy went out with Zeppelin when there were a succession of tragic events which shocked everybody, really. Zeppelin were at their peak, selling albums by the truckload, and everybody wanted to see them, and their shows were huge sellouts. Zeppelin were highly respected, and then suddenly everything seemed to go pear-shaped.
On July 26, 1977, tragedy struck when news came from England that Robert Plant's 5-year-old son, Carrick, had died from a stomach infection. Robert was devastated.
And then there was the terrible news that Robert Plant's son, Carrick, had died back in England, so they had to cancel the tour and everybody had to fly back. I think a lot of the fun went out of Zeppelin, certainly as far as Robert Plant was concerned.
No one pushed him to do anything. Peter and the band sat back and said, look, whenever you're ready, let us know what you want to do if you want to do something, and that was really it.
Eventually, Robert reunited with the band to record their 9th album. Released at the end of 1979, In Through the Outdoor went on to sell more than 5 million copies.
The release of our